Chapter 1, verse 13 reads, "For you have heard of my former life in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God violently and tried to destroy it." Here in verse 13, we've got Paul saying that, speaking to the Galatians, you've heard of my former life in Judaism. And the traditional church says, aha, see, here you have it. Here's Paul declaring that he is no longer living according to the traditional tenets of Judaism. This is proof positive, they would say, that he has left Judaism in favor of Christianity. He says, you've heard of my former life in Judaism, right? What does that imply, they say? Well, that implies that his current life is Christian, right? And that seems to be the way that the verse is reading. And that's why I read it in Greek. But let's see what my commentary has to say. And I'm working from what I believe is a grammatical, historical, socio-religious perspective, meaning I'm trying to take the words of Paul in as a whole, not just letting one verse stand out there alone to teach theology. I think that's a bad way to study Scripture if you're just going to let one verse dictate your theology. Rather, in order to understand the verse, you need to use context. And so the context of this verse needs to be read against the context of the rest of the chapter, and then we just keep expanding the context until we can discover the meaning. The context of this verse within the chapter, the context of the chapter within the book, the context of the book within the other books that have been written around that same time period by the same author. And of course then that whole set of books within the context of the existing body of scriptures, right? So essentially, if we were to allow Paul to speak for himself, not from one verse only, but from within the larger canon of the rest of the Bible, then we're going to find that Paul really isn't admitting that his former life in Judaism was a former religion that he followed after, and that he's now trying to explain that he follows after Christianity. Let's read what I have to say about that. It's critical to a proper understanding of sha'ul that we recognize the syntax, that is the word order, of the Greek of this verse. The word order shows that former, the word former in the Greek, actually modifies the phrase life in Judaism and not previous Judaic life, as some might presume. In other words, Paul's not saying my former life in Judaism. He's not saying my previous Judaic life. You've heard about my previous Judaic life. So the careful observation is made to show a shift within the paradigms of Judaism and not outside of them. In other words, Paul did not leave Judaism for a new religion called Christianity. What's happening is that Paul is switching party lines, I like to say. So he's still within the confines of Judaism, but from a non-believing Jewish Pharisee to a believing in Yeshua Pharisee, and all of this within the confines of first century Judaism. So he's not, it's not as if he's leaving the religion of Judaism, rather he's simply graduating from traditional non-believing Judaism to now Messianic Judaism, so to say. If we could fill in words that we're familiar with today. Tim Haig's commentary highlights this, and I think it's important to bring this out. Tim Haig writes, quote, "We should note carefully that the word former, which is pate in the Greek, which when functioning as a particle in the verse, right, it means once or formerly. And Tim Haig notes that this word pate functions to modify the word manner of life. So we got former manner of life, right? Anastrophe, manner of life or lifestyle, my former lifestyle. It does not imply that Paul formerly lived within Judaism, but that as of the time he wrote the Galatians, he was no longer living within Judaism. That's not it at all. And Tim Haig goes on to conclude what Paul is contrasting, is his personal halakha, right? You remember halakha is your way of life, the way in which you walk out the Torah, the manner in which you conduct your life according to your set of beliefs and your understanding of those beliefs. So Paul is contrasting his personal halakha before and after his faith in Yeshua as Messiah, not his former life in Judaism as opposed to his present life apart from Judaism.